Three, two, one. Hello, Eric Kvatek. Welcome back to the Ponytail show. You obviously didn't get enough the first round, but it's a real pleasure to have you on the show. I believe the theme for today is learning from failure. That's a theme that you chose. Did you have a sort of self-reflective week?
Yeah, well, so what happened is after our first conversation, I kind of felt like I'd really failed. Because you and as I was trying to answer your question about this, incredible photo shoot in Vietnam, this incredible black void was like in my head. I could barely even remember being there. So I was sort of like, stammering, trying to think like what did I do in 3 weeks of this kind of epic photo shoot? How, I literally could think of nothing.
Yeah, I get that all the time.
I ended up talking about the hotel, which was like probably the last thing on my list I wanted to talk about was the stupid hotel we stayed in. So it was really kind of stressful because you're kind of on the spot,
Yeah. Well, I don't want to stress you out, man.
Well, I'm just, this is still kind of new to me, this live thing.
Live, but not live.
Yeah, because it was all this amazing stuff. What I should have talked about is for the first time in my professional career, I shot surfing.
Yeah.
Actually being in the water with the surfers.
Yeah, tell us about that.
It was so. At first I was thinking, oh, I'm going to shoot on the beach from the beach with a telephoto lens, and there'd just be surfing out there. And I'm not saying that I was being lazy, but that was my initial,
plan,
sort of least time consuming way to shoot the surfers. And then that wasn't working. So then I was like, I had a GoPro and I was like, oh shit, I just need to like swim out there. And cause then I could just talk to them, like, instead of being 100, feet away, I was like 3 feet away, a meter away. So yeah, it was actually ended up being like super cool because I could kind of like change my angle and direct them, and we could take a break and float around for a while, and it was a beautiful day. And
nice.
Yeah, and I think the result, they weren't surfing the biggest waves in the world, but at least they were.
Yeah, you got a good feeling.
Yeah, and they were, and that's where my camera got stolen. Also, while I was shooting the surfers, my camera got stolen.
Wow. Like off the beach?
Yeah, my real main camera that's never supposed to break broke the previous day. So I rented a camera which was broken. So the broken rental camera was in my bag at the surf shack, and somebody stole it while I was. But there was a happy end. The guy that I was shooting was like the boss of that beach, the surf boss.
Surf boss.
And he actually got my camera back for me.
Wow.
So he put some weight on his pals and was like, hey, you can't be stealing my
pals'
these people's
stuff.
Cameras. Yeah.
This guy's taking photos of me in the ocean. You can't
exactly.
He sounds like the real deal, man.
No, he was like a badass. I think for him, it was probably more boring for him because instead of surfing like really incredible waves, he was surfing these little, little smaller waves.
Small waves. But, it takes real skill to surf small waves, like more than you'd think. So are you telling me that you shot that all the surf shots on a GoPro? They looked really good.
The ones where they're actually in the water, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean it's it looked okay.
Yeah. I thought from looking at those photos, I thought you shot like you got like housing for your like digital SLR
Yeah,
and like,
yeah,
but you shot that on a GoPro. Wow.
yeah. I
Yeah,
actually
nice
have the
one.
housing for like my big camera, but it's so heavy to travel with. Like it's
Mm,
so huge and massive to travel with. I almost never travel with it. But
mm. Have you shot like what have
yeah,
you shot with the housing?
um, just practice. Like
Mm.
like diving because I'm certified for scuba diving. So
Wow,
thought
I've
that
always
I would
wanted to do that.
I thought that I would use it for like underwater, stuff, but it's incredibly the real rig. It's so complicated. It's pretty time consuming. And on the
Mm.
cap, like on any photo shoot, you're like you're hustling so going so fast. It's just the time doesn't really allow for like fiddling around with all that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
But
I feel like you have to like on for those who like don't know what it would be like to be on a capital shoot or any shoot that you do. Like yeah, it's super fast paced. There's a lot of people involved, and Eric always has to kind of think on his feet. There's a lot of problem solving involved with that, which is kind of like linked to this topic of learning from failure because you really have to like act on your feet all the time and just kind of
yeah,
go with the flow and like you can't really have this like obsessive um like premeditated vision of the production because like any small thing can happen and then like you'll have to like change on your feet and yeah.
because
um
a lot of photo shoots they shoot. It's called tethered, so they have like a laptop connected to the camera, and
mm,
then the photographer's like taking one shot, and then like 20 people are like staring at that laptop
yeah.
trying to figure out, oh, is this the perfect shot? I don't shoot that way, so
Yeah, you're like
because
your approach is like really like a documentary photojournalist. And like yeah, you just that's what's so impressive about seeing you work is like you just get things right. Like you just capture so much that you're sure that you've got the shot. And like yeah, when you go through the shots at the end, like when I look through the photos you shoot for my stuff, like there's always an option, like the right option for every like moving shot and like this. Yeah, there's almost too much option at the end of
yeah,
a photo shoot, which is like
I've actually been trying to shoot less on the photo shoots because looking through like 13,000 photos is a little bit insane.
yeah.
So yeah, I've actually tried to like cut back.
Yeah, but then you could like miss something, you know?
Yeah, I like shooting. So like if everything's great, like the light's great and the people look cool and the clothes are awesome. It's just I kind of don't want to
Yeah,
stop. So
totally.
it's kind of yeah.
Mm, yeah,
So that was successful. That was not failing.
good. Tell me more about the Vietnam shoot.
So there was this other thing that I thought that actually was really kind of brilliant. Some of my favorite photographers were from the Vietnam, like like war photographers from the Vietnam War. And there's one in particular, Larry Burroughs,
Mm-hmm.
and some of the really iconic photos from the war are from him. And he actually died eventually during the war. But there's all these photos of his where I've never really been able to figure out like what the conditions were. They've got this like kind of blue, hazy, foggy almost quality.
Mm.
And in literally 30 years of taking photos, I've never quite gotten that same lighting situation, like that quality. And so we were shooting in Vietnam, and I think it was after we shot the surfing eventually. We had like an hour before sunset, and there was this location that I really wanted to shoot at, but it would take us almost an hour to drive there. And so I was almost like, fuck it, we're not going to go there. But then I really wanted it, so we drove as fast as we could. It was like this hill, this pass through these hills, and it's the photos where like the models have this like super kind of denim hippie
Yeah.
ensemble, like, so we're shooting, and all of a sudden it was that light, like it was, and
Wow.
it was just the combination of being a little bit in the hills, the like dusk, a little bit, because people burn their trash also, and there's a lot of pollution from like the trucks, but it was
Yeah.
whatever it all came together, and it was exactly that light from his photos.
Wow.
And it was like, and like when I think about shooting in Vietnam, it's that I was hoping to find, and I even during the scouting, like I never saw that. It just sort of happened at that moment. So that was kind of
That's a special moment.
for me. It was kind of incredible.
Yeah.
But
I feel like every country has like a very distinct quality of light and photo. Like Japan has a real like hazy light, like a real like diffused light. Like Australia is like this harsh, stark, super contrasty, like opposite of diffused light. It's like, well, because there's no ozone layer above Australia, so there's no like UV filter. So there's got to be something to do with that. Like, what's your favorite? Do you have like a favorite country where you just really love the light?
So in the summer in like the Arctic Circle, like in Sweden or Iceland, when there's literally 24 hours of daylight, like that, like when the sun has like at around midnight, like 11 p.m., when the sun is like kind of down by the horizon. So there's like an hour or two where it's still light, but the sun is just barely.
Yeah.
So the rays from the sun are almost horizontal to the ground.
Whoa.
If you can imagine that, like,
so either almost like beautifully flat light on your face, or like backlit.
Yeah.
Wow, like almost studio.
Like in a normal, not the Arctic Circle, like when the sun goes down, it's almost going like straight down. So you only have a couple, you have a very short amount of time where the sun is at that, golden hour. But in the Arctic Circle, because the sun is going like, scooping down and then going back up, you have a couple hours actually where you can shoot like with this kind of beautiful, hazy golden hour. Yeah.
Golden bendy light that shoots down and up. Amazing. Sounds like you stepped into a wormhole, into some kind of like weird parallel universe.
It's kind of like that. Because you get, also in the Arctic Circle, you get a little weird because you look at the sun and think, oh, it's 6 p.m., and it's like, it's 11.
Yeah, right. That must be a head spin. I've never experienced that in my life, except for I guess like in Europe, like in the summertime it gets dark real late, and
France has a pretty late sunset in the summer.
Like 10 p.m. ish.
Yeah.
That's quite a head spin for me. Like, but I feel like slightly off the subject, but like you experience time with like the change in light and seasons and stuff, like for example, like living in a tropical country, you don't really remember specific points in the year because there's no like winter, spring, autumn to like pinpoint those kind of like moments in the year. That kind of reminded me of this like weird parallel universe of the Arctic Circle that you kind of, where sun bends and time seems like constant. Wait, time is constant. Sorry, everyone. But time seems still. But yeah, wow. So So, did you manage to get any of those special shots on film? Because I remember you brought your Nikon to Vietnam.
In Vietnam. I wish I could say yes, but but
But
no.
but that's for next time.
Yeah.
You did shoot film, like the film that you shot in the Golden Triangle just before that Vietnam shoot came out real nice.
Yeah, no, that
Yeah.
was really, really nice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I got you that Fuji Superior, which has that like
yeah.
green tinge, which came out super nice. Yeah, I hope we can make a special, I don't know, something special with those film shots. We'll see how the world
I'm sure you'll
plays
make
out.
something very special.
Special. Yeah. I'd love to yeah, make a book or something. That would be fun. So what else about Vietnam did you miss? Is your watch that you wear from Vietnam?
This is the watch that this is the watch that Martin Sheen wears in Apocalypse Now, the Vietnam movie. But it actually, this watch wasn't made until after the Vietnam War, so it's sort of a mistake in the movie. It's a failure. It's a total
It's a
failure.
historical fail, learning from failure.
But yeah, but it's like it's the Seiko diving watch that
That
Martin
came out.
Sheen wishes he'd worn in the Vietnam War. I think this watch is actually from Australia. I got it from Australia, actually, from a professional, like a professional, like a diver, not like a recreational diver, but like a somebody that had to work under the water, like an undersea welder or something like that.
Yeah, wow.
So it's like super destroyed.
That sounds very Australian and wild.
Yeah, Australians are pretty tough.
Yeah, they are pretty tough people. Speaking of vintage, am I allowed to go back to pre-photographer Eric Kvatek to
Yeah,
vintage? What would I
dealer.
call that? Dealer, vintage dealer
Vintage
Eric
dealer.
Kvatek.
Yeah,
What?
back to the 90s.
Yeah, back to the 90s. Let's go there.
Yeah, the 90s are hot right now.
That's because like
I was still hot in the 90s.
is that learning from failure?
Yeah, I survived the 90s. I failed by living. I failed by getting old.
So how did you fail as a 90s vintage dealer? I think you did pretty well before you failed.
Yeah, actually I didn't exactly. I personally didn't fail. The world economy failed.
Yeah.
So I was selling to Japan mostly, and in 1997 there was like a huge Asian stock market crash.
Mm.
And I remember I was driving in a rental car. I think I was in California, and I was just listening to the news, and I remember like the newscaster said, "Oh, today in Asia, the stock market crashed." And I knew in that moment, I knew that my business was probably finished. Like it was a huge crash, and I just sort of knew, like, oh, I'm done. And I was done. Like,
Yeah.
my main client owed me $60,000
Oh, jeez.
at the time, and I was just like, fuck, like, is he gonna pay me? And at first he wasn't paying me. Like I was owed that money for several years, and
Wow.
he eventually, I mean, to his credit, thank God the Japanese have this kind of incredible sense of honor.
Yeah, they
He
really
little by
do.
little he paid me. You know,
Wow.
um, it wasn't like one lump sum. It was literally spread out over several years,
Mm.
and you know we settled up. So that's how that ended.
I feel like that's very relevant to our learning from failure theme during the worst economic crisis since the
Yeah,
Depression. Um,
yeah,
yeah, like, yeah, heavy feelings. Actually, today, I didn't tell you, but today, um, found out that my factory in Vietnam have to shut their doors because of the problems with supply chains right now. People are not paying, and yeah, there's a lot of, I feel like there's going to be a lot of this happening. I think we're going to all kind of shrink down and make more kind of more handmade, like cottage industry kind of pieces. But yeah, I feel
but
like,
they're temporarily shutting down or permanently shutting
no,
down.
like, yeah,
Finished,
finished.
done.
Have to, yeah,
Sorry to hear that.
yeah. It's kind of a bummer. It kind of like, not kind of a bummer, it's a big bummer because I'm just thinking about all the people who, I mean, they do get paid for 3 months of salary, but what are they going to do? What are all these people that I've been working with for years, like, how are they going to
Yeah,
work? And I think this is a question that like people all over the world are asking themselves right now. And like, I find myself not in such a like drastic way, but like reevaluating, learning from failure. This failure may not necessarily be like my failure, but just the failure of so many systems. But yeah, like
yeah.
that's why I really want to hear about how you did transition from being a vintage dealer. Like, how did you get the idea of starting out being a photographer, and how did you go about it?
Yeah, so kind of amazingly, like it was definitely not planned. I mean, so I was already taking photos, and I had in the back of my mind since like high school that I, wanted to be a photographer. So I didn't know how to do that, and I didn't take photography in college. I was drawing, so I really had no training, to be a photographer other than me wanting to take photos of, my friends and you know my travels. So when my vintage thing ended, I really had no plan. I mean, luckily I had some savings, so I had time. I had a little bit of time, but you know, so because that failed, that sort of allowed me to move to New York City,
Mm.
like a year later, which I mean, and I had just ordered like a brand new truck, like the truck that I have. I just ordered it purely for business, purely for being a vintage dealer. It was like it was so I here my business had failed, and I had this like you know kind of expensive truck that I still had to pay for, and had no reason that no reason to own it anymore. Like I still
Dang.
have it, so I mean at least I
You
ended
took
up with
real
a
good
truck.
care of
But
it.
yeah, I mean I kind of take care of it. But so so just by chance, my friend was like, "Hey Eric, do you want to move to New York City?" He'd broken up with his girlfriend, and he wanted somebody to maybe share his loft. And I was just like, yeah, I guess I can move to New York. Like I have nothing else to do, you know. So I moved to New York in 1998, and it kind of worked out because my friend was like almost never there, so it was almost like having my own place. But so one of the first people I met when I moved to New York was a vintage Hawaiian dealer and collector, and I was selling some like yeah, I was setting up at the flea market and just selling like stuff that I had, just to get rid,
Mm.
basically to get rid of it, and make a little extra money. And she bought all my Hawaiian stuff, and we just started talking about Hawaii, and I had a dream to go to Hawaii, like kind of a you know you know
A dream.
what do they call that?
A
A dream.
fantasy.
And yeah, I had a fantasy of going to Hawaii because when you grow up on a farm,
Mm.
in Ohio, going to Hawaii is like the farthest, weirdest, you
Yeah.
know,
Dreamland.
people. This is a tangent, but I don't think people these days can appreciate what travel used
Mm.
to be like. Like going to Hawaii used to be like, if you did it, you did it once in your life,
Yeah.
and that was it. Like once a year to go surfing because it's cool. Like you would save your money for
Mm.
10 years to go to Hawaii. Like
Yeah.
for an American, going to Australia was like unheard of.
Absolutely.
Nobody going to Japan. Like nobody went to Japan. Nobody, you'd hear about people going to Europe, and that was about it. Like, going to Mexico was a big deal.
Yeah.
And you didn't, and you literally did it once in your life, like that. So
Yeah.
so I had this fantasy of going to Hawaii, and I met my friend Janu, and she told me about these Japanese guys she knew that were opening a jeans store, and she was like, you should meet them. And you know how you're like your mom and your aunt tell you stuff like that, like, oh, I know this guy that
Yeah.
he likes
He likes stuff. He
he
likes
you
stuff
guys
too.
might you guys should meet, and but amazingly she was like, you should talk to these guys, and I think she knew that I spoke a little bit of Japanese from selling vintage to Japan, and I met them, and I had just shot these photos, these kind of documentary style photos in Indonesia, and they saw those photos and were like, oh, can you shoot our fashion but make it look like this? And and I get what they meant was unpretentious,
Mm.
not professional models,
Very like real and
not
raw.
raw, not posing like model poses.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, sure, I can do that. But I really didn't know. I didn't know that I could,
You were
and so like,
just
yeah, I can
like,
do that.
yeah.
And just by fate, my neighbor I lived in this loft. It was in the Hell's Kitchen, and my upstairs neighbor was a real fashion photographer. And so I just like knocked on his door, and I was like, dude, somebody wants me to shoot some fashion photos. What do I do? And he I knew how to make it look like my stop, how my look, but I just didn't know the logistics of like doing a fashion, like doing a job, like,
Yeah.
like having having a backup camera, shooting Polaroids, so before digital, you'd shoot a Polaroid to see what it looked like and show the client the Polaroid. So just weird, stupid stuff
Yeah.
like that. Like, having a bounce, like a reflector.
Yeah.
And on the film, you'd have to write, like, on the roll of film, you'd write like shot 1, roll A, roll B, roll C, so you he taught me like in a couple hours. He just gave me the rundown of those
Yeah. The
logistics,
workflow. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And I had never, what did I never do?
What a good guy for showing you all that, though.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was just a combination of like, like friends being friends, like, my friend Greg that asked me to live in New York City, Steven upstairs that showed me how to be a fashion photographer, my friend that introduced me to.
Yeah, but I feel like it takes a sense of openness as well. Like like, these things happen in real life all the time, but you actually have to be open and receptive to all of these, like,
Yeah.
these opening doors in front of you
Yeah.
to, like,
Well,
go and dive
some people will
in.
say, like, occasionally people will say to you, like, "Oh, you're so lucky," like as if it's just luck that you ended up doing that for 20 years. Like,
No, it's always
there's a little bit of
calculated.
luck, like, but but being like you said, like being open to things happening
Yeah.
sometimes is that's what it takes to kind of survive or thrive.
Mm.
Like not being closed to like
Yeah, yeah.
opportunity.
And just like not
Um,
knowing, and just not knowing where also like inspiration could come from anywhere, and like just being open to that, and just being like in just enjoying the world around you, and just seeing those, like, those little signs and those little windows opening and those doors opening and those people,
yeah.
and just going for it. Yeah.
So they asked. So part of the photo shoot was they wanted me to shoot, and they had this beautiful brand new store in New York, in Soho, and they wanted me to take photos in the store. And so I was comfortable shooting on the street with natural light because that's what I do. Like that's what
Mm.
they wanted. They wanted me to just do this sort of street photography documentary style, but then they wanted these photos in their beautiful store, which was not what I do. And so I bought a basic lighting kit that I still have to this day, and I plugged it in. I plugged it into their store, and I immediately like blew out their wiring,
Oh,
and
fails.
so just in the heat of the moment, I just had to figure out, well,
Yeah.
how do I fix, like, how do I
How
get
do
the
I roll with
shot,
that?
So I ended up going and buying like a kind of like a much lower quality lighting kit that took less power, but still had some light. So I just fixed it.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then so I shot for I shot for them for 3 years, so they like something worked out.
It worked out pretty
And
well. I
yeah, and
remember
then
those
that's how I met
days.
Kiro.
Yeah.
So that's how I met Kiro because he designed for them, and then shot for Capital for 15 years so far. So, but you
Yeah.
couldn't plan. You couldn't plan that
No.
trajectory.
Yeah, you
You,
just have to be open and follow your nose, and just ride the good wave while it's still, well, there's energy in it, and like be dynamic and be able to. I think like when you have this kind of set idea of what your life should be, then things get real difficult when it doesn't go the way you think it is going. But like
yeah,
when you have just no expectations, everything's like stoked. So happy about
yeah.
that. Right?
So I was going to tell you about some epic failure, and I think this perfectly kind of segues into one of these failures.
Tell me.
So because people think like, oh, Eric, oh, he's shot for 45 RPM in Capital and his life's incredible and he's blessed,
Fashion photographer.
fashion
Fancy fashion
photographer.
photographer.
Well, so between 45 RPM and Capital, there was like a couple years where I really like I didn't have these kind of clients, and
Mm.
so like when I was shooting for 45 RPM, I just sort of got used to like, oh, I'm gonna go eat sushi every day in New York City, like because I didn't cook, like I didn't cook, and I also hated washing dishes.
Uh,
So when you don't want to cook, I had dirty dishes in my sink one time for a year, like the same dishes. They literally
what does that even look like?
disgusting. But I just didn't want to touch them. I didn't even, I didn't, and it's not a snobby thing.
No.
I just hate like
Must be nice.
washing. Yeah, must be nice. So I ended up eating out every day for,
Must be nice.
years. And but then when I lost that, so when I lost that gig, um, all of a sudden like these credit card bills started rolling in, from, you know,
Real.
30 days after you'd already spent the money. And I wasn't getting photo jobs. And the next thing I knew, I owed, a lot. I had like multiple, all these credit cards with super high balances. And I owed so much, and I tried to pay them off. I would sell stuff. I sold like a bunch of my vintage stuff. And I tried to do like the honorable thing and like, pay the credit cards back. But the interest rates were also so high because I would miss the payment. So, I don't know if this is a very American thing or if like people elsewhere in the world can relate to it. Like
I think
the credit card.
the credit card interest rates are a universal thing, but I did like see I saw a documentary or on the news or something, like the penalty rates like charged on certain, they're like, oh right, it's Trump's son-in-law. He's like, all his all the properties that his company run, they like really like charge insane interest rates for all their tenants who don't pay the rent on time, and it just seemed like a really horrific thing, and just awful. Yeah, but
Yeah, so my interest rates on these cards were like, I don't know, 30 or 40%, like penalty interest rate,
holy moly.
So no matter how much money I paid them,
yeah,
it didn't
it just keeps going
come
up.
down.
Yeah, right.
So I kind of knew that like, I was screwed. Like I had really had no income and I had no way to pay these credit cards, and I had no future jobs on the horizon. So I basically ended up finally I just had to suck it up and declare bankruptcy, because I had no way, and I really didn't want to do. I really, just out of pride, I didn't want to do that, But I just finally I had to like, do it, and like, but back then, it's even more pathetic. Like I think like one time I didn't check my email for a week, in the middle of this, and I opened my email and there was like a job opportunity to shoot something, which I missed because I didn't, look at my email.
It probably caused you a lot of stress to open your emails at that time, though.
Yeah, well, because then there's like bill collectors, collectors would call you back then on like at like a home phone, a landline, and like I just dreaded the phone ringing. Like to this day, the phone ringing stresses me out. Like literally, like if I'm in a hotel room and like they call my room to tell me something, it really like it just stresses me. It's not so much the cell phone ringing because I was used to it being a landline.
Yeah. Like so, those wake up calls in the hotel that the hotels do, like that scares the hell out of me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was pretty, it was pretty depressing, like I really felt like I just totally failed, you know? And so basically I had to go to court, and the judge, they kind of look at your assets and tell you what you have to pay. And I really didn't have any assets left. Like they can't take my cameras because that's how I work. So that was like, I got to keep my cameras, and I got to keep my truck because they basically said, well, that's how you would, drive. It was already 10 years old at the time. So it wasn't like worth a lot, but yeah, they leave you enough to survive. I had no, and I remember walking home from court, declaring bankruptcy. And, I felt like, I
Heavy.
failed.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just a weird feeling,
Because
like
it's like,
I lost.
I'm sure it's like also like just this like instinctual feeling that because all these some all these things around you happen, but you can't help but take it as a personal failure inside. It's like part of you. Yeah, but that's heavy.
Yeah. I mean, and it's not like I had kids to feed. So, I mean, it wasn't, people had it worse. People that have declared bankruptcy have had it much worse because they have families to feed. And, but, for me at the time, it was
Yeah,
pretty depressing,
absolutely.
you know?
Especially,
And,
I think like for a creative person as well, um, that feeling can be, you already feel like you're always swimming upstream as an independent creative person just trying to make money, and then when something like this happens, you can't help but take it as like a real blow. Mm.
yeah, but I think, so what ended up happening is, um, I basically had no money, so I was really I had to like I was I basically I had to leave New York. I was thinking, I was planning on, where am I going to move, and moving back to your parents in Ohio, which was definitely an option, but it's not. When you're in your 30s, you don't want to move back to your parents' house because you failed.
Mm.
So just as they say, as fate would have it, Kiro from Capital contacted me maybe within a month, like very
Wow.
soon after this. I got a phone call from Kiro, and he was like, Eric, do you want to, are you available to shoot for Capital? And I was like, yeah, I'm available. Let me check my
Let me
calendar.
let me put you on hold and get the
Yeah,
real Eric Kvatek. Just one
yeah,
moment, please. Well, you
yeah.
gotta fake it till you make it, right?
Yeah. So then, but even when I started shooting for Capital, it was still pretty rough. I mean,
Mm.
it's not like you get a regular paycheck instantly. You get paid, a couple times a year, and then you still got to budget, your
Mm.
money. And, I mean, I had to catch up on my rent. I probably wasn't even paying my rent at the time. So I had to like catch up just to keep my apartment. I had to catch up with rent.
Mm.
I didn't have, back then I still didn't have a digital camera. I only had my film camera. And so, but yeah, I mean, it kind of saved me from leaving New York and not being a photographer. But I was definitely capable of being something else, and I was actually, making those plans.
Yeah.
Like I was researching truck driving schools, like professional truck driving schools, to get the proper license.
I think you'd be a
Um,
good truck driver, but I still think you're a way better photographer.
yeah, I'm sure. Hopefully, I'm a better photographer than I am truck driver. But
Maybe
yeah, so then
you could be the traveling truck driving photographer.
they probably see some pretty incredible stuff.
Absolutely. My uncle was a truck driver. He had like a bunch of stories to tell.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and back in the olden days, like truck drivers would have like multiple. You could have licenses like from different states, so like you could get, from speeding, like you'd get your license taken away from driving so fast, but then you'd have your other truck driving license. So you
Yeah,
just
right.
work your way through all your licenses. And but I also I researched being an EMT, like in an ambulance.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
I was researching how to do that as a career. I was researching, commercial pilot school to be a
Whoa.
pilot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
apparently
all
if
of which
you're,
took money I didn't have.
yeah, apparently if you are a pilot, if you do your pilot's license in Australia, there's like a high demand for that kind of work. Well, that was the case before the virus. I'm not sure what the
Yeah.
situation would be now. Probably a lot lower. Um, yeah, my sister, like, she had a housemate that was doing his pilot's license, and he was just telling me how, like, how high in demand pilots were, and yeah, how actually short the the time was to actually be qualified to be a pilot. Yeah, pilots see the world from a real interesting
Yeah.
perspective too. Hey, you went
Yeah.
into it.
Sure.
You went in a helicopter recently.
Yeah. So the other
In
Capitol photo shoot in South
South
Dakota, I
Dakota.
got to shoot in helicopters, or like actually in the air, with like no doors on the
Wow.
so you're literally just looking down at, you know.
Wow.
Yeah, that was pretty incredible. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit thirsty and I have no liquid. I have no liquid in the middle of my interview. I might have to drink my urine or something to survive.
Well, your T-shirt says Survivor. I really get the feeling
Survivor.
like this is the subliminal message you're trying to tell everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
If
like
this is the most
seriously,
difficult,
yeah. No, it is really
go ahead.
inspiring to like to just like hear how you just have really like just gone with the flow. I think one thing that I think really like is what makes people freeze in these kind of scary situations is fear. And like I feel like people either when you're a scared person, you either freeze or you like make action plan. And I feel like if there was a zombie apocalypse, like you would definitely be making all the action plans, which is like, you know, it's yeah, it's like it's a I think it's a more positive way to be when you're instead of captivated by fear. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel
So
like learning. Yeah, you go for it.
can I tell you? Can I tell you my other failure story?
Please, I'm enjoying
Do we
this.
have time? Do we have
Yes.
time? So literally the very first thing I ever did as an adult was fail. So it kind of set me up. Like it definitely affected my thinking for the rest of my life. Like, how do I want to go about things? So basically, like when I was applying to colleges, I was really good at drawing. Like I was, a really good artist, let's say. And I wanted to go to art school, and, it's not so much that I wanted to go to college, but I wanted to get out of Ohio. Like my goal was to get out of Ohio. And I had a really miserable high school experience because I didn't really have very many friends, because I was like the stuff that I was into, there was just nobody else into it. Like,
Yeah.
I was the only kid that listened to punk rock. I was, it was just it was a really nice suburban town, but it was just kind of boring. So my goal was to just get really far away from Ohio, where there would be girls that were cool, and I had this fantasy that all the other kids would be like super, enlightened and, cool, and,
Yeah.
which ended up not being the case. So I only applied to these like really specific private art colleges that were like really cool places. I didn't really realize how much money they cost, but I sort of had this feeling like, I'm such a good artist, I'll get a scholarship, and I had no backup plan. I had no backup school. Like I didn't have like one cheap school, on the list. So like basically I got accepted to all the colleges, but then cost, I was like, oh shit, like I don't have $20,000, you know?
Damn. Yeah.
And there was one school that sort of led me to believe that I might be getting a scholarship, but to get it, you had to go to this awards ceremony in Maryland. So I had my parents and I had to drive from Ohio to this awards ceremony, and we didn't, you know, it's a lot, took a fair amount of money just to drive there. And the way they set up the awards ceremony is you're sitting there in the dark and they're showing each student, they're showing the winners. Like if you've won a scholarship, they show your artwork, but they did it alphabetically. So if they got past your name, you knew you didn't get anything, you know? So we're literally, so I'm like 17 or 18 years old and I'm sitting there in the dark with my parents, and they would pass up somebody's name and you'd hear them start crying, like literally, you know, in the dark, you just hear sobbing, you know?
Whoa.
So they, and the other thing is I was like super confident as an artist. Like I, you know, I felt like, you know, I've got some talent, you know? And as they were showing the winners' artwork, I was like, oh shit, these people are really talented. Like these people are better than me, you know?
No.
So before they even got to my name, I kind of knew that I'd failed. Like I kind of knew like I'm not getting a scholarship. So, you know, they came up to the K's and the whatever, and they blew past my name without calling it. And I wasn't even that bummed. I already kind of knew, like I already, you know, like sitting there and seeing like how talented the other students were, I kind of knew that, you know, I'm not getting this scholarship. So basically then I couldn't afford to go to any of the colleges I applied to. I didn't want to stay in my town. And I could have just gone to work, or I could have just worked for a year and whatever. So it was, you know, it wasn't the worst failure ever, but I was kind of obsessed with getting out of that town. And I found some like rinky dink, like art school that would accept, you know, that would take my money, but it was still in Ohio, but at least I was out of my town, you know? So I moved to this town and I can't afford like a really good apartment. So I rented this like shitty apartment. It was full of cockroaches, you know, like cockroaches are just like, literally I found a cockroach on my toothbrush.
I've lived in a place like that too.
I worked at a Subway sandwich shop. Do you know what that is?
Yes, where the guy lost all the weight from eating sandwiches.
So I worked at this Subway sandwich shop. The manager would actually make fun of me for working too hard. Like she would sit there, like literally would sit there and make fun of me, like ridicule me for being a good worker. One of the other workers threw a knife at me. Like, yeah, it was just like this horrible. The point is that my first foray into the world was horrible. Like really, like, I would like ration my food every day, kind of like what I'm doing now. And I lost like 20 pounds like the first semester of this school from like literally not eating. So basically though, I had to, you know, figure out how to fix it, you know, how to fix my fuck up, you know? So I went before the internet, you know, to research colleges, you had to go to this thing called the library. You ever?
Yeah. Wow.
So I went to the library and I got a book, and this book listed universities that had art departments, and it was by price. So I went to the bottom of the list to the cheapest school, and I worked my way up the list until I found a college that was super cheap in a place I wanted to go. And I ended up going to the University of New Mexico in New Mexico.
Hey, that's not bad.
Yeah, no. So that was literally the best decision that I ever made in my life, I think, was moving to Albuquerque, New Mexico.
That seems like a real cool place. Yeah.
Yeah, and the tuition was like $1,000 a year.
Yeah, wow.
For the whole year.
Yeah. We,
Yeah.
I didn't
So
realize, I
so that was
never
my
heard this
failure.
story of yours actually. We have like quite a few little points like in common. Like I have a similar college story, but mine, instead of Subway, it was Pizza Hut, my first job.
Eats that's yeah.
Yeah. And like I was the only girl in the Pizza Hut, and my boss, like the manager, he hated his job so much, and he would like listen to death metal all day, like just, and then like my first job in Pizza Hut was to grease the pans, the deep dish
Mm,
pans. They'd be
that's
like,
good for your complexion,
yeah,
right?
they'd be like stacked up piled high, and every time you'd open, it was like a lucky dip, because every time you'd open, get a new pan up, there may or may not be a huge family of cockroaches living in one
Cockroach,
of them.
yeah.
And yeah,
Cockroach pizza is really popular, right?
yeah, it's like how they get the crunchy taste. And also, I picked my art school was like the cheapest art school. It was like 2,000 Australian dollars
Yeah.
for half a year, so 4,000 Australian dollars for a whole year, which was probably like 2,000 US dollars or something like that. But like, and like honestly, I didn't learn anything in art school. Like honestly, like I took photography, but I think like in the since from the 60s, um, like art became like the way you learn art at art school kind of changed, and like it was all about like anti like free the medium, and
Yeah.
free your
Yeah.
mind, and like don't be confined by technicality, and therefore like I learned I didn't know what I was doing at art school, because like I didn't even know, like I thought I went to learn photography, but I just went, people would just, it was more like a philosophy degree rather than like learning anything technical. And if you wanted to learn something
Yeah.
technical, you'd have to teach yourself, and it was a very confusing point in my life. And then I ended up having all these like spiritual and like questions about my existence on this planet. But I really believe that like creativity comes a from problem solving. So
Yeah.
when you study like a specific like medium, like whatever, if it's printmaking or photography or painting, like you learn all the tools of that medium, not to be the same as every other painter or photographer or whatever, but to problem solve and figure out the infinite ways that you can make it unique to yourself. And like then this like new postmodern way of like learning art was just like so wild, like, but yeah, I felt like, yeah, that was an interesting point in life. Did you learn anything at art school?
Um, was weird. Strangely, there there were there were several good instructors, and I so I would take so what the smart thing I did is I didn't take the classes I wanted to take. I just took classes that had good instructors. I didn't care what the subject matter was. So I like ended up taking a watercolor class, and I
Cool.
ended up taking like a pottery class
Oh, cool.
because the instructors were good. Like
Yeah.
so I didn't take photography so much, but unless there was like a really good instructor, then I took that class. But
Mm,
yeah, so I actually kind of learned. I actually kind of learned something.
that's good.
Not necessarily. I didn't necessarily. So when I took the watercolor class, I walked into the watercolor class like punk rocked out, like tattoos. I already had tattoos, and I I don't remember what my hair looked like, but I mean I looked like, and
Yeah.
everybody else in the class was like, they were mostly returning students, like in their 60s and 70s, and the instructor actually like dude, I think you're in the class. Like, you don't belong here. And I was like, no, I think I belong here. And he really tried to, he's like, I don't think you're going to like this class. Like, I don't think you're going to like it.
Ouch.
And I was like, man, I just want to learn what you have to teach me. Like, I don't care what the class, like, I just want to be here. I want to be here, you know?
Yeah.
And it was exactly what you wanted. It was just super formal, technical teaching about how to watercolor paint, you know, almost Zen, you know? But one of the guys in the class was a Pearl Harbor survivor.
Whoa.
He was in the military in the 40s. He was at Pearl Harbor when it got bombed. And, you know, he was like, you know, even back then he was probably 70 years old. And we ended up being like total pals. Like we sat next to each other every day. He told me war stories. And he had just like, his wife was so traumatized by Pearl Harbor. She had a mental breakdown, and like he went home one day and she didn't know who he was. Like her mind had completely snapped. And, you know, he had stories about, you know, picking up machine guns and shooting them at the airplanes.
Whoa.
And, you know, he was, but then he had traveled, he'd traveled, and he'd actually gone to Japan as an adult, you know, as an older person, and, you know, made peace with that whole country, you know? So that was actually kind of an amazing class, but not, I couldn't, you know, I only took it because I knew the instructor was, you know, a good guy.
Yeah.
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 But I wouldn't trade that class for like any other class, you know?
Nice. Well, yeah, like it's been real inspiring actually listening to all your stories. Like it makes you feel like, in a way, it's real reassuring just to know that, like, you know, waves will always be coming, but they'll get a little less scary looking each time you stay out there and wait out. But the waves will come nonstop. That's the reality. Well,
yeah, I mean,
yeah. What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, I mean, what I really love about doing the photo shoots is the problem. Like a lot of what I like is the problem solving. Like, and I think that like anybody can pick up a camera and take photos of people wearing clothes.
Yeah.
But you know, taking good photos but also just fixing all the little problems and improvising on the fly. I mean, that's part of what I get really excited about, like thrilled about, like on the actual shoot. Like, how do I fix this problem? How do I improvise the fact that it's raining, you know, been raining for 12 hours, you know?
Yeah.
But that's kind of like life. I mean,
that
you know,
is life.
In life, you've got to figure out how to fix that problem.
Yeah, life is like a big Rubik's Cube that I'll probably never get right or fix or make it each side the right color. But that's the process of life, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your inspiring words today, Eric Kvatek. It was really enjoyable. We haven't touched on nearly most of the things we were going to touch on today, but that gives way for another episode.
Yeah. If I haven't totally failed this time, then
you can make up for your failure next time.
I'll just keep making up for failures.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening, and see you next episode. Hopefully, Eric Kvatek will fail more for our own enjoyment.
I'll do my best. I'll do my best to fail for you.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Okay. Bye. Thank you. Thanks for having me.